Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. This is a specially called meeting of the CERS Investment Committee. We have a very limited agenda this afternoon, but I think we'll have some good, lively, and valuable discussions of the proposed new investment policy statement. So we can begin by the call to order, and might we have the opening statement, please? And
Yeah,
please proceed. Okay.
this is a special meeting of the County Employees Retirement System Board of Trustees Investment Committee. This meeting is being broadcast via video teleconference pursuant to KRS 61826 and may be viewed by the public at the Kentucky Public Pensions Authority offices located at 1260 Louisville Road in Frankfort, Kentucky. It is also being broadcast to the public live via Facebook. If you are speaking and are not appearing by video, please identify yourself before talking. If the video or audio broadcast is interrupted, we will attempt to reestablish a connection. If the connection cannot be reestablished within 30 minutes, the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled to a later date.
Thank you. I believe from Sherry, you indicated we do not have any public comments. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, thank you. As I mentioned, we basically have one.
Dr. Hackbart, would you like for me to do roll call?
Oh, I'm sorry. Please. Yes.
Yes, sure. Dr. Hackbart,
Present.
Mr. Cheatham,
Here.
Dr. Milkman, Mr. O'Mara,
Here.
and Ms. Pendergrass.
Here, in the boardroom.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Now, I guess we can proceed with our one-item agenda. And basically, we've been, of course, working on the investment policy statement over probably at least 6 months. And I think that's justified because as we continually begin to have talked about the fact that it is probably the most important thing that we do as a committee is to maintain and make periodic adjustments to the investment policy statements as we see fit based upon changes which might be occurring nationally or even within the state of Kentucky. So this afternoon, I think our objective is to finalize our investment policy statement so we can move it on to the full committee for their review and approval. We have first guest this afternoon to talk about the investment policy statement. It's been reviewed by, I think, many, probably all of us, and there have been issues which have arisen, and they've been dealt with, I think. And so I think we might begin with just sort of a discussion. I think you have already received a red line version and also the probable final version of the policy statement. But if Dave or Greg or Chris might just proceed and just talk about where we are from their perspective, changes which they have recommended, and any other recommendations that they think we might want to consider either now or in the future. So the floor is yours, all of you. Please, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Hackbart. There's a lot packed into the enclosed red line IPS, and I think you outlined it well. It is the most important document that you address and monitor and continue to revise. I think we've had a lot of good back and forth over the past year on this IPS. I think we've moved it forward quite a bit. We've had a lot of good discussion. We've addressed many things that have been processed in recent discussions of this with the investment committee. Primarily what we'll look at today are the final changes that have happened since the last discussion, which was on September 17th. So we're going to step through these in just a minute. Chris will kick it off for us, but I would just say too, you already said it, Dr. Hackbart, but as we thought about this internally, we think a good goal for today would be to get your IPS, have it approved, move it forward from where its last date was 2022. And so, and I say that just because there's so much, I think, good discussion that has happened, and yet it remains a fluid document. It's not, if you approve it today, it's not done and over. Our guess is we'll have some good feedback yet to come, and probably process that into 2025. But I think at a high level, you can think about if you put this in place and today approve it and then get it to the board, you will move the ball forward in a sense quite a bit from where the document was a little bit over 2 years ago. So we think that'd be a good thing to focus on for today. We'll go to the cover memo, and the cover memo, Chris will take this and outline the 3 significant changes from what we talked about September 17 meeting and how those have been added in. And then I think, we can just take it from there and look for questions.
That sounds fine. Yes, a good approach.
Thanks. Thank you, David. If so, everybody has page 2 of the materials up. I'm not going to hit on all of the bullet points as David mentioned. I'm going to try to focus in on the 3 areas that, coming out of the September meeting, we were asked to consider, enhance, or add sections to address very specific topics. And the first one is under section 2 in responsibilities. The second bullet point, section C, we added in subsection 6. We thought it would be appropriate to have an asset class review on an annual basis. And this is going to serve a couple of purposes. One, it'll help calibrate or even recalibrate the structural targets, risk, and performance with those asset classes. And specifically under section 7, we were asked to differentiate between public and private search processes. Having these asset class reviews under the alternatives or within the private equity, private real asset, and private credit areas will help frame the picture when new investments are brought to the investment committee or the board. It will help kind of tee up what the staff is looking at as far as forward-looking funds that they might be looking to invest in, how they're choosing the sizing, why they're investing in specific vintage year, region, sectors, whatever that might be. It will help kind of tee those types of processes up for the search and the recommendations throughout the year. If we go down to section 3 under asset allocation guidelines, the second bullet point, we incorporated a quarterly reporting process of the actual allocations in relation to the strategic policy. And that's really more a formalization of something that's already being done in our performance books that we provide you. We do look at what your current structural targets are within each asset class, and we provide bands around those, which are really determined by your rebalancing bands. And you can see very easily if those are overweight, underweight, out of policy, in policy. But this is really a formalization of that process. And then lastly, in section 3, the last bullet point, section D, there was some conversation going back and forth, and I think this will kind of ring true to everybody in the most recent meetings that we've had, where we had a continuation vehicle brought to the committee and the board for approval. Co-investments and continuation vehicles are a little bit of a unique situation where oftentimes staff will be approached by the investment managers or the GP to invest alongside or roll over into a continuation vehicle, a standing investment. And oftentimes those have very short time windows. And often those time windows will not line up with your committee or board meetings. So what we've done is we've added some additional language, and you can see here, there is a bit of a typo, I'll just point out here, but we added language that 2 out of the 3 between the CERS, it says executive director, but in the IPS, it's actually the CEO, the CERS investment committee chair, and the CERS board chair. If staff or specifically the CIO or the executive director were to go and get approval, written approval via email of 2 out of the 3 of those, that would allow staff to move forward with a co-investment or a continuation vehicle investment. So with that, those are the 3 largest changes that we've made to the document that you have in front of you. I'll open it up to anybody that has any questions regarding those items, or if they have any questions in general.
Just a general question on continuation vehicles. It's been a little bit confusing as we went through this particular case recently, and the amount of time. How much time do we normally anticipate having? I guess there's an informal process and a formal communication about what's being proposed and so forth. And I guess the thing we've been concerned about, make sure that we have sufficient time for our staff to do due diligence and so forth. But I guess, are there any, like, I'm not sure that's the right term, but industry standards in terms of how these time that need be needed for processing, reviewing continuation vehicle participation?
So that's really a GP item there, in the way that they can decide to move into a continuation vehicle. And oftentimes you're looking at weeks, not months or quarters, to be able to do that due diligence. So you are in a very shortened time frame, very similar to the co-investment time frame that you may have been aware of, or that staff has to work with if they are looking at co-investments. Now, that's not something that the staff has any control over. So that's something that I would say, as your consultant, and we are here, we have a team that's able to help process those alongside staff. We would certainly encourage and work with you collaboratively to make sure that we're processing that as quickly as possible, to make sure that we can come up with a recommendation in line with the timelines that the GP is providing us. They are becoming more and more common, just based out of liquidity events, where some LPs are looking for liquidity in their portfolio, and sometimes a GP will roll over into these continuation vehicles as a means to provide a liquidity event. But it does happen in a very short time frame as compared to sourcing of a new investment.
One option that is also available is that once the staff is notified of a continuation vehicle request, the chair could go ahead and schedule an investment committee for a week to 10 days out from that, but ahead of the due date, if it's a complex one that staff wants more input from the investment committee. So you could do that, and the committee chair or the board chair can call a meeting within 24 hours.
Okay, maybe. Good, thank you. Any other questions or comments on these particular suggested changes and adjustments?
I want to go back to, it's probably somewhat minor, but in section A, under the introduction, the last line in that section, the CERS board shall manage the assets of the insurance fund in the same manner in which it administers the retirement fund. Is that not somewhat in conflict with the section, the first paragraph under section 3 on page 28 of board books?
Could you expand on that, your thoughts, Lyle?
Yeah, we start out, on the first page saying we're going to manage the insurance fund the same way we manage the retirement fund, but then we come back under asset allocation guidelines. In establishing asset allocation guidelines, the CERS board recognizes that each CERS fund has its own capacity to tolerate investment volatility or risks. Therefore, each CERS fund will be continually studied with Therefore, each CERS fund will be continually studied with asset allocation guidelines established on an individual fund basis.
So, Mr. Cheatham, I would say that while at the surface level, I do see where you're saying that that's contradictory. The being administered in the same way is different than being invested in the same way. So they could have different allocations. Some asset classes may not be appropriate for one versus the other. If we wanted to provide additional clarification to separate the two from administration versus investment, we could certainly look at doing that if that would be preferable.
My concern there is a little bit of language clarification. I understand what you're saying. A little bit of language clarification might prevent, room for somebody disgruntled about something to turn around and sue us saying we're not doing it. We're not holding ourselves to section 3 by, see where I'm headed? It's a I'm a little bit concerned it's a liability question.
Right. Yeah, I think Mr. Cheatham, you're saying that the language in the opening section may make it sound like all allocations are the same. Is that right?
Maybe we need a reference to section 3, manage the assets of the insurance fund in accordance with section 3. And then section 3 tells us how we're gonna allocate assets. The current situation we have right now is a good example because the insurance fund is overfunded, and that might give us a little bit more flexibility compared to the pension fund, which is closer to, I'm sorry, I forgot the number that we were working with this year, 58, 56. So the difference between 100% funded and 56 might affect how we look at the asset allocation for the insurance fund. So I would
As a practical
send it
matter,
to section 3.
as a practical matter, we're basically following the same investment policies for both today, as far as I understand, correct?
And we have been for a while because at one point, the funded status for both insurance and pension were very, very close. It's only been in the last 2 years when we got some positive claim cost results in the insurance fund that we shifted to an overfunding situation. And that's fluid, you know. If the Medicare costs go in the opposite direction in a future year, we could end up with the opposite situation of what we have now.
But the key thing is that we have a may. They could be different, but basically we can also operate on the same strategy and the same investment allocation.
Yes, and that's what we've been doing
Right.
at least since 2016. So if we
So
did,
I wonder if the issue here with language in paragraph A on page 1 is about administering, which has been crossed out, versus managing. I think what we're saying is they'll be administered in the same manner, but we're all recognizing here that the asset allocation could be managed differently, could be different policy.
well, on page 1, you're saying manage the assets. And I agree with Mr. Cheatham that implies asset allocation, which is described in section 3. So I think it's the word manage the assets, or the phrase manage the assets, that's given him some heartburn. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Cheatham.
You're dead on target. You know, if we reworded that one sentence to say the CRS board shall administratively manage the assets, might at least separate those two concepts anyway.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, if you have a consensus on that as we come through with the final version to go to the board, we could redline that one more time.
Or you could say administer the management of, right?
Is there also the option to get rid of that last sentence on this page we're looking at now, or is that tied into that? This is old language, so it's one of those things where can't really speak to the genesis of it, and would be hesitant, as we were in other areas, to strike anything out without making sure there wasn't either a statute or a specific reason it needed to be there. But I think if we could get,
I would leave the reference to management of the insurance fund in there because we have a statutory responsibility for insurance and pension, and there are separate statutes for those. So I would leave that sentence in there, but word it so that we're not in conflict with section 3.
I think Lyle's language can fit here.
Mm-hmm. I'm okay with that.
Would
You can certainly
Lyle?
consolidate that and get
Right.
something that will be ready for the board. That's a very quick change.
Okay. With that change, Lyle, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I just like to have a little
Sure. That was a
little light between those two issues.
good thing to point out. Thank you. Okay. Any other items?
I've got a list, but I don't really want to go into all of them.
I think you brought some good thoughts in your list.
Yeah,
Some
there
that
are
we
there are
might be-
some that we could address in the future.
Yes, I think so. Yeah,
There
I
are
mean,
some that I think are minor edits. We could go through those very quickly. And then there are some that I think parallel what we're trying to do in the strategic plan. Mr. Willer and I have started working on investment management component of the strategic plan so that we can bring back recommendations for finalizing the strategic plan to the investment committee. And these two documents have now reached that point where one of them's a chicken and the other is an egg. So we might need to go back and forth just a little bit to, we might find something that we want to put in the strategic plan that merits inclusion in the IPS. So we might need a little bit of going back and forward there. And those items I'd like to leave until Mr. Willer and I have an opportunity to do a little bit more work on it. Through the document, we are using the terms fund and plan, and I think there's a little inconsistency in some places. In some places it's exactly right, in other places it's confusing. I can send the notes that I made on the document to David and Craig and see if they can make sure that we have those issues covered. We've got a provision in here that the CEO signs contracts and documents. Those of us who have been in local government come from the environment that only the elected executive official has legal authority to sign a contract. Not that I think that the CEO should not, it's just that our members might be, our member employers especially, might be a little confused about why the chair of the board is not signing those documents. So just food for thought on that one. I'm a little concerned that our CERS general counsel didn't have much time to review this, and he had the same problem with the red line version that I did. All the formatting changes are inconsequential and make the document very hard to read because there's nothing in that right-hand gray box that is something that needs to be reviewed. However, in some sections of the red line version, the letters are squished together and you can't read them at all. So there's a couple of word features and tools that would have fixed that, but that's food for thought for the next time.
Betty,
Yes.
the one on your list that I jumped out at me that was on my list
Okay.
was the definition of risk, or excuse me, definition of risk analysis.
Yes, and I added that one because we have had a lot of conversation about risk. The list that I have, including volatility, economic, credit, liquidity, market, interest rate, and concentration risk, comes from a GASB pronouncement that requires the plan to disclose information about those types of risks. So as from an accounting perspective, those are issues that I'm looking for when we're evaluating our investments. So I think it's that one I think is something we want to look at through the document and try to identify places that we could change that. Let me find the comments that I made on that and where they are.
Under this would be section 2, item C. I thought Roman numeral B6 might be a place to be able to put that definition.
See what?
Just that's really what you're looking for is a definition anyway.
Yes, and we don't really have a glossary in this document, so the definition would have to be incorporated in this. Yes, I had it marked for section C, and there's a numbering problem on in there above. I'll send this later. It would be in the current document. It C6.
I think that's the same one.
Yeah, we could add it to the end of that.
Add geopolitical with that.
Geopolitical, yes, I like that. And let's see. There were several things that are on my wish list for future investment issues. Those are items that we could do at some future point. I don't think we're close to ready to add that just yet.
Right, I think they may involve a discussion in themselves, so.
Yes. The investment committee nor the board currently have a specific policy on those issues. And what I'll do is, my apologies to Mr. Lindberg and Mr. Tesman. I didn't include you on the email where I listed these items. I'll get that information to you as well as the PDF that I created where I did some comments and so forth on a variety of, there's some grammatical things in there too that I'm not going to take up our time now.
Sure.
I do think it would be important for us to get to a point where we're just about done on this, and we like everything that we've got in the document. And then as Mr. Willer and Mr. Barrow and I have a chance to link up the IPS with the strategic plan, if we identify an additional edit or two that needs to be added to or deleted or modified in the IPS, that we could make a change there. We could do that at the same time we talk about the strategic plan, as soon as we get that meeting scheduled.
Sure.
Just to clarify, Betty,
Yes.
your editorial suggestions, you'll forward those?
Yes, I'm
And
going to try to do that right now.
Do you want to cite those quickly?
Using the terms fund or plan consistently throughout the document. Deciding who should be signing contracts, and should that be consistent with what we do at the local government level, since our local governments are employers in our system. Making sure that there is language in here that the CERS General Counsel is linked in for key reviews. And then in the future, some of the items that I thought would be interesting to review would be the issue of whether or not CERS owns its own assets. When the statute was first drafted for the separation and the creation of CERS, the General Assembly included a provision that CERS would own its own assets. We ended up pulling that particular provision because it would have been too expensive to transfer just the titles from KRS to CERS. So that came out of I believe it was the 2021 version. The 2020 version had the provision in there that we should own our own assets. I have talked with Mr. Lindberg about the notion of whether or not a manager brings us a proposal for an investment, and there are proposals in there for management fees, performance fees, etc. Is it okay to say, yes, between KRS and CERS, we're going to buy a total of $250 million. $200 million is going to belong to CERS, and 50 million is going to belong to KRS. And he indicated to me that managers are used to seeing that sort of request. Both parties get the same deal because the manager's getting a total of 250 million. So that's an area that I think would be important to consider going forward.
Betty, it strikes me that's an issue that we could handle in the future rather than trying to include that in the current statement.
Yeah, we need a lot more conversation.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I'm going through the list that needs a lot more conversation.
Right.
Okay.
And I'll just, just to support what you said about our conversation a while back, Betty, so yes, that is often able to be negotiated with managers where there are multiple plans or funds involved.
And
In fact, we already have that with the insurance and the pension. So
okay,
that's
good. Yeah, all right, good deal. Oh, well, and I mean, my thought was that over a 10 to 15 year period, we would gradually transition the portfolio such that title on everything new we purchased was in CERS, and then eventually we'd end up with the assets owned by CERS. In section 2F on the custody bank, there is language about how we handle the unitization. This language prompted an intense discussion with the former CIO, and I don't want to say very much on it in that, but I think that it would be helpful to have Mr. Lamb and Mr. Willer to look at this language and see if we can come up with a description that is more like what we specifically do here within the asset pools for within KPPA. I believe that this particular paragraph came out of a marketing brochure for Boney and is not necessarily what we're doing here. So my request on that one would just be for Mr. Willer and Mr. Lamb to look at that and see if in the future, in the next edition of the IPS, we might be able to clarify that one a little bit.
That's the third paragraph you're referring to?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Just review it. That's basically what you're suggesting.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not convinced that that paragraph reflects what we actually do here.
So,
I think it reflects what Boney tells potential customers is an option for them. And it's written at a very broad level. And some of that we may do, some of it we may not. But let's see. And I think that's it for the issues that I think could be linked to the strategic plan include our descriptions of private equity and private credit in most cases in the IPS say that these assets should earn higher returns. It doesn't say how much. So my question is, should the investment committee have a threshold that says we want these assets to earn at least this much higher to justify all of the extra fees that we pay for those private assets?
Again, that's probably something we need to focus on in the future rather than adjusting the current document. Is that?
Yeah, I'm not talking about adjusting the current document anymore.
Right.
I'm talking
Good
about
suggestion.
what could be linked to the strategic plan.
I see. Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm.
Another similar type item is, should we have acceptable thresholds for borrowers' credit ratings or the broad loan terms that are used in private credit? Or do we just accept what the managers are telling us? Take it off. And then the last one that can be linked to the strategic plan which may require more conversation than what we're going to do at this particular point in time, is that at some point, I think we need to have a restriction of assets for the tier 3 assets. We're doing an accounting tracking for when those members in tier 3 earn their interest credits and when we assign the employer credits to those accounts so that the members get the appropriate level of interest. But as we transition to more tier 3 and less tier 1 and tier 2, then I think it's going to be more important to identify how much we have available for tier 1 and tier 2. That comes back to an issue that Mr. Cheatham has raised on a time or two, is when do we have to start drawing down on the investment portfolio to pay benefits? And what our actuary has said to us is that's not going to happen in the near term. But there may be a point in time where the tier 3 assets are such that they need a restriction on them, so we're not using tier 3 assets for tier 1, tier 2 benefits. Again, that's a long term. It's not going to happen next year, so it doesn't need
Right. Sure.
PS.
Okay. Okay, to be clear, the editorial comments, is everyone on board with Betty's suggestion in terms of editorial comments that would be assimilated into the final document? David, are you okay? Are you?
Yes, so maybe, I think it would be helpful if we could clarify. I have 4 points, I believe,
Okay.
that we will do for the, whatever would, come to the board here following this meeting.
Yes.
Those are the language that Lyle talked about in section A. We
Okay.
processed that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then from the things that Betty just outlined, I believe it would be, unless these are for the future, I believe it would be the fund versus plan terminology, the who signs the contracts terminology, and the CERS general counsel linked in for key reviews. Those 4 items.
One other one, David.
Go ahead, Chris.
The definition of risk. So we will need to put some more specificity around that.
Yeah, good point. So that'd be 5 items. Just to clarify, do you want all 5 of those in the next red line that would then go to the board for approval? Or do you want to put all or some of those in that future?
I think those five items were easily included in the document that will go to the board.
I think they can be. They can be accommodated.
Okay.
I guess my only question would be about the risk. The series of risk factors. Are those risk factors which can routinely be evaluated regarding prospective investments?
I think most of them listed depending on the actual asset class.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some that don't apply to bonds as opposed to equity, but I think you can make an effort to grade each of those. I don't think it'd be too difficult.
Probably
I would
not.
say,
Go ahead.
I was going to say risk is multifaceted. So
Right.
to Mr. Cheatham's point, each asset class is going to have its own unique risks associated with it, whether it's liquidity risk, whether it's credit risk, whether it's at a plan level, shortfall risk, behavioral risk. There's many different lenses you can look at this through. So I would suggest we maybe select or maybe provide language that illustrates that risk is multifaceted, and hopefully we can narrow in on the presentation of risk through the course of 2025, what areas the board or the IC would really like to focus on the reports that they get from staff, so that we're, kind of putting this into a normal cadence.
What I was thinking about is as appropriate for individual investment types, something of that nature. At your point, that different types of assets have different type of risk factors. So you wouldn't be a universal assessment of the same factors for all types of investments, but as appropriate would might be a kind of a language insert that could be helpful to say that the staff would be looking at those risks which are relevant to that particular investment, given that there are multiple types, something along that line.
Yeah, we can certainly craft some language around that.
Okay.
There was one other paragraph that confused me, and that
Oh, yeah.
is section 2, the last sentence in the second paragraph of the introduction. It says, adequate security and a reasonable rate of return shall be provided to a disqualified person or in any other prohibited transaction described in Internal Revenue Code section 503B. I have no idea what that means. But I thought that it might be we took out every fiduciary shall provide. I thought it might be important to say CERS shall provide adequate security, but I still don't know why we're providing security to disqualified persons.
I guess your question is, what's a disqualified person?
That's the first part of the question, yes.
Yeah, and I'll just add, as Chris or Craig mentioned earlier, I think that is one of those legacy items that we felt was a little bit out of our territory. Not sure exactly what can be addressed with that. So it's probably code related things that, for you.
I have no historical perspective to give you on that one. I've never looked at that sentence before, so I can't tell you why it's in there. Mr. Bronco, do you have any idea why that sentence is in there?
Let me look at it. It's a little hard for me to see on my phone.
Right. That might be an item that we all study and see if we need that sentence in there at all.
Yeah, we can always take it out at the board level.
Right.
That's a good point, Lyle. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Are we about ready to have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that we approve based on the 5 items identified for clarification.
And for a red line version to go to with those changes to go to the full board. Is that sort of the idea? Yeah. Okay. Is there a second to Lyle's motion?
How do you want to handle additional edits that we identify in the strategic planning process?
I don't think we need to include that in this motion, do we?
I don't think so. I think the strategic plan will dictate what we have to come back and add or take out.
I think it's understood, Betty, but I don't think we need it in the motion to the
Okay,
board.
so we're going to take a version to the board that doesn't have the strategic plan edits in it.
Right. And we can discuss that. Sure. Right.
I'll second the motion.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any other final comments? And just to review, the motion would be that we recommend this version as redlined or with the slight adjustments for the 4 or 5 items to go to the full board for their approval. And then given consideration about the strategic plan, that would be a further on conversation, realizing that might suggest some modifications or adjustments or tweaks with this in the future. Is that sort of everyone's understanding? Okay. Okay. Are there any other comments before we vote? If not, all those in favor of the motion as stated to motion carries. Good. This has been a 6-7 month effort, but I think we clearly have established a sound and good document. Just a thought that I've had as we've gone through this process, it seems we've gotten more detailed in a lot of the sections. And I'm not sure it's possible, but just to throw it on the table before we adjourn, you know, members and
The
so
Governmental
forth.
Accounting Standards Board used to have, I don't think they're using it actively right now, but they started with a project that they call Plain Language Supplement. We had some governmental accounting standards that were very, very complex. And so the board issued what was called a plain language supplement that was attached to the highly technical one, but provided a more layman's approach to a description of what the document includes. So
I
other
just think it would be,
authoritative bodies have done it.
I think it would just be valuable to have something like that for legislators who might have an interest. Okay, how do you actually do these things in fairly straightforward language? Maybe even if we get questions from the press or something, how do you make these decisions? What's delegated and so forth? And maybe
I think you can do it. I would just say it has to be consistent with this, but I can help review the two and make sure they're not inconsistent.
yeah, I think clearly consistent. Yes, I agree. It's just a matter that if individuals have just good questions, can they go to a source that they can get a reasonable answer that they can understand without getting into the details, which gets a little bit more complicated and more difficult to fully appreciate. So anyway, this thought I've had as we've gone through this, that we have tended to get more and more detailed, and it's understandable for those of us involved in the administration and actual day-to-day activities, but there may be individuals who would have an interest in how do you do this? That we could have we call it popular version, executive version, or something of that nature.
We also have a similar issue in our financial reporting. We issue a annual comprehensive financial report that is reaches right up there, 200 pages now. I don't know how many pages we have now that we've separated. Now we have 3 100-page ones. But in addition to that, we publish what is called a summary annual financial report. And that provides some, what I affectionately call, fun facts to know and tell about the more complicated report. So our summary annual financial report could give us a guideline for how we might approach a plain language supplement for the IPS. I can think of a lot of members who would take the time to read the IPS, compare it to what they're doing with their own investment portfolios, and ask, why are you doing this? And why, what does this one mean? So I think it's a great idea to do that.
And certainly the asset allocation and some of the justification for that could be part of that. But anyway, that's just a thought I've had, so I thought I'd share that with you at the end of the meeting today. So,
Mr. Hack or Dr. Haber, I'll just add that you might want to involve legal counsel in that as well, just simply given that this is a policy document.
right.
And then when you provide another interpretation of that, it might be.
That's a good point. Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
Mr. Bracco said he could take the lead on that project.
Yeah, I think if you wanted to designate somebody to help me make what I'd call like a primer or a summary or something, we can definitely do that.
Or just call it an executive summary of the
Yeah.
investment policy statement, I think.
Yeah.
Something of that nature. I just think would be helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, we can figure out how to do that.
Okay. Well, I believe that concludes our business or agenda for today. So would someone have any comments like to share? Not, we'll call the meeting adjourned.